Hold on, folks. I'll be back. Hold on for a second. I'll be back. Hold on. Hey, you tourists, it's your boy Domination. This is Back in the Base, and chugging the this out text, baby man. That's back. None of this. Real men rust up, fake men rust up, real rust up, fake rust up. Right to our preacher, preach on. Welcome to the Back in Basic broadcast. Back in the Basic, previous episode, and today we're gonna talk about the previous episode. We're gonna talk about disco. There are people who love disco and there are people who hate disco, and I'm going to explain why people loved it and why people are hated it. So let's talk about the genre of disco that people try to bring this back. Some that you heard about, what part of the disco era. So let's talk about disco era. Let's talk about it on some previous episode. Okay, disco is a genre of dance music and a subculture that integrated in 1970 from the United States urban nightclub scene. Its sound is technical by four on the floor beats and treadle bass line, stringing sessions, horns, rhythmic piano, and sonic sonoramic and electric rhythm guitar. Well-known disco artists included Diana Summer, rest in peace, Gloria Gaynor, and Gino Go and Martino, Boney M, Earth, Wind and Fire, the Bee Gees, rest in peace to the three brothers, and the brothers still living, and Shaka Khan, Chick, KC and the Sunshine Band, ABBA, the Tenement of Houston, Sister Sludge, the Tramps, the Village People, and Michael Jackson, while performing to gather public attention. Recording producers working behind the scenes, playing an important role in developing the genre. Films much as Saturday Night Fever 1977 and Thank God It's Friday 1978 contributed to the disco mainstream popularity. Disco started as a mixer of music from generally popular with African American, Hispanic, Latino Americans, Italian American, and gays. Gay men, in Philadelphia and New York City during the late 1960s. In the early 1970s, disco can be seen as a reaction by the 1960s counterculture to both the dominance of rock music and the standardizing of dance music at the time. Several dance artists are developed during the period of disco popularity in United States, including the bump and the hustle. To hustle. My mother loved that record. Hustle is a dance. By the late 1970s, most major U.S. cities have drafted the disco club scenes, and the DJs would mix dance records at the clubs, much as Studio 54. There's a movie about that. And there's a wild parties going on. I've been hearing about that stuff that really goes on, and it really takes down for all the the drugs, the orgies, everything would go down over there in Studio 54. They took that down. Not much at Studio 54. There's a lot of stuff going on at Studio 54 in Manhattan. and a vital level popular around celebrities. The nightclub of goings are nightclub goings often worn expensive and exclusive of sexy fashion. There was also a drift of drug subculture in the disco scene, partly for drugs that would enhance an experience of dancing to the loud music and the flashing light, much as cocaine and chronicles, the latter being so common in disco subcultures that they are nicknamed disco bagels. I didn't know that. Disco bagels? That's crazy. Disco clubs are also associated with predominantly as a reflective of the sexual revolution of this era in popular history. Disco declared as a major trend in popular music in the United States followed the famous disco demolition night, and it's continued to decline in the popularity in the U.S. during the early 1980s. However, it was remained popular in Italy and certain European countries throughout the 80s, and it was the key influence in development of the electro dance music, house music, hip hop, new wave, dance, dance punk, and post disco. The style have several new scenes since the 1990s, and the influence of disco remains strong across America and the European pop music. A cursus of reveal has been underway since the early 2010, coming to the great popularity in the early 2020 during the COVID-19 epidemic. During to the disco fun and escaping nature, an outlet of the mental toll the pandemic has been taken on the people. The albums that has triggered to this reveal, including Dancing on Confession on the Dance Floor. That's Madonna's album, and Ransom Access Memories. The Slow Rush, Cause I Love You, Future, no, Hey You, X, What's Your Pleasure? It Is What It Is, and Katie Mandador album itself titled Disco. Okay, it started in Philadelphia, but between Philadelphia and New York City. Started lived the Philadelphia funk and the Philadelphia soul and funk and rhetoric of a soul. Okay, that's the style is in the origin and the culture origin in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Philadelphia and New York City, and the rhetoric of Europop, house, and post disco, post punk, hip hop, new wave, grunge. It says grunges. Basically garage house, and suddenly pop and acid jazz. So it's basically that's what it stands for. Between it was spread all over to regions of scenes: Philippines, Europe, Italy, and Poland. New York City, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Miami, Houston, and Los Angeles, and Montreal, basically, Canada, basically. All right. The terminology, the term disco is the shorthanded for the new word discomico, a French word for liberal of a photo records, derived from the Quano. The word disco quano has the same meaning in English in the 1950s. And disco inquadro become used in French for a type of nightclub in Paris, France, after those having resorted to play records during the Nazi occupation in Nazi and Nazi occupation in the early 1940s. Some clubs use it as a some clubs use it their proper name. In 1960, it was also used to describe a publicly sustained nightclub in a English magazine. In the summer 19 in the summer of 1964, a short and sleeve dress called the disco quadro dress was brutally very popular in the United States. The early known using for the revival from disco described the dress and has been found in Salt Lake Trudell on July the 12th, 1964. But Playboy magazine used it in September of the same year to describe Los Angeles. Vince and Nishi was one of the first to describe disco as a sound or a music genre. He wrote the features article, this quote unquote rock party, that appears in Rolling Stone magazine in September 1973. Yeah, I never know that. I never know where disco coming from. Oh, it says many more and all this other stuff, the sound and all that. And but okay, we know all the hits and the songs they done. And my bad, it's Studio 54. So a lot of that stuff going on. By the late 1970s, most major cities, major U.S. cities have drafted the disco club scenes. The largest scenes are most notably in New York, but also in Philadelphia, San Francisco, Miami, and Washington, D.C. The scene was central on the disco quote the nightclubs and the private club parties in the 1970s, and the notable of the disco, including Crossley Disco, the Secessionists and Velocious in the Studio 54, and Paradise Garage in New York City, and Silhouette in Philadelphia Studio 1 in Los Angeles, and Predator Patrol in Chicago, and the Library in Atlanta. So in the late 70s, Studio 54 in Midtown Manhattan was arguably the best known nightclub in the world, and this club plays a major frontally role in the growing of disco music and the nightclub culture in in general. It was operated by Steve Bell and Al Lansing, and it was notorious for the radicalism that went on within the the the. I'm trying to pronounce this. The the Belkin, or the Balkan, the Belkin are known for the sexual encounter and drug use was radically planted. It was a dance floor. Was whispered rhetoric with a image of the men in the moon, that including a animated cocaine spoon. Another New York nightclub dated to 1940s, had a reveal in the late 1970s. it was embracing disco, it would have become the settling of a Barry Manilow song of the same name. In Washington, D.C., a larger disco nightclub, much as the Piper, Piper 9 and the other side, originally regarded and exclusively as gay bars, become part of the popular along the capital era of gay and straight college students in the late 70s. And the DJs and stuff like that, the sound and the light equipment and all that, and the dances, the style and all that, and and a lot more, and the drug of all that. Okay, they had nicknames right here. The drug subculture, in addition to the dance and the styles and the of the disco club scene, there was also a driven club drug subculture, partly for the drugs that would influence an experience of the dance to the loud bass heavy music and the flash color lights, much as cocaine, nicknamed it blow, and literally poppers, and the others, and accordingly in the 1970 clubs, drug inquisitive, which in a specific of motor and rotosity that and giving the sedative that one arm and a leg have turned into to Jello, and accordingly was are so popular at the disco clubs that the drug was nicknamed Disco Biscuit. I see why. Cause they sniffing that cocaine look like a biscuit. I see why. Paul Gridley, Paul Griscomton Bird stated that the 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 the, the, the relationship of cocaine to the relationship of cocaine to the 1970s, the disco culture could not be stressed enough. During 1970, the use of cocaine by well-to-do celebrities led to its glamorizing and to widely hold a view that was a sort of drug. LSD. I heard Beatles take this and all these other entertainers. LSD, that's a tripping part of drug. Weed and speed. Speed is bad. Don't do it, folks. It's horrible. Drugs is bad for any kind of drug. Just be careful. Or don't do it. Just stay clean. And predominantly are also popular in the disco clubs and the using of those drugs, contrary to the holodeck equipment of the dance floor experience. Since disco dance are typically held in the liquor licensed nightclubs and dance clubs, and alcohol drinks are also consumed by dancers, some users intentionally include the alcohol with the consuming of other drugs, much as quantitional for a stronger effect. I see. That's crazy, man. And AIDS and all this other stuff. There's a lot of stuff what was going on in disco era, and there's okay, eroticism and sexual sexual liberal. Okay, I'm trying to pronounce this. Okay, eroticism and sexual liberals. According to Peter Burnley and Stern, the massive quantity of drugs and constantly in the disco culture produced the next cultural phenomenon of the disco era, the rampage and predominantly in the public sex, while the dance floor was the central instances of sexual abductive and actual sex actually taking place in either the region of the disco, bathroom stills, and exit stairways, and so on. In other words, cases the disco becomes a kind of mainly of course in a and rather during the menu for a night out, and the saints of the nightclubs, a a a higher percentage of the gay men dancing and predominantly would have sex in the club. They apparently have unprotected sex because in 1980, HIV and AIDS have not been identified as the saints. The dancers would travel to an unremarkably upstairs a balcony to engage in sex. And particularly and the public sex at the disco was part of a borderline a trend towards and exploited a free sexual expression in the 1970s, and so, in an era that is also associated with swinger clubs, high tubs, and key parties. I see why. It was a lot of stuff going on in the 70s, man. A lot of it. I believed it. Yeah, I heard about Stonewall culture. I heard about that. There was a movie about that. About gay brothers and sisters trying to be free and all that. Okay. He used Donna Summer's single Love to Loving You, Baby, 1975, and I Feel the Love, 1977. As the supporter of the evening of the president, the relationship between the incentivizing bass line and the background to the syllable sounds of organs, Summers underscore in the tracks, and liken them to the drug and illicit and the sexual revolutionaries fans of the disco who fought to be free for themselves through disco and as of Sex Machine. Consular Rose see this as a influence that created subculture like high NRG and the disco, which allows for exoticism and technology to be the thought and exploiting through potentially and subtly based in line and closely rhythmic and techno the technology the tech with that taps into the interbody rather than the lateral exotic part of the body. I see why. There's a lot of stuff going on, man. I can see why. You can look at the hits like Joining In by the OJ's Love Train and The Love I Lost by Harold Melody and the Blue Notes. Now That We Found Love by the OJ's 1973, later a hit for the third world in 1978. There's a lot of wars going on. And the TSOP, the Sound of Philadelphia by MFSB with the vocal by the 3 Degrees, a wordless song written as the theme for Soul Train and #1 hit on the Billboard's Billboard Hot 100 in 1974. There's a lot of hits. Oh man, Mama Makusai. Yeah, I like that record. Soul Makusai by Mengo and Knuckle was the first release in French in 1972. It was picked up by the underground disco scene in New York City and subsequently got a product release in the U.S., reaching number 35 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1973. Michael Jackson was being sued by that. Do you want to be started something? Basically, he used the permission to use his chorus. It's a lot of hits and many more, man. But there's a lot of things. And Motown turned into disco. They were using it to make hits and stuff. And ABBA, they was in Eurovision, and I mean, in the contest in 1974, they had a song called Dancing Queen. Yeah, that was a hit song as well. I wasn't around disco, and the Bee Gees, right here in December of 1977, the film Saturday Night Fever was released. It was a huge success, and as a soundtrack become one of the best-selling albums of all time. Yeah, it is. The idea for the film was sparkly by the 1976 New York Magazine article titled "The Trailer of the New Saturday Night," which in part of the chronicled the disco culture in the mid 1970s New York City, but was later revealed to have been freshenized. Some critics said the film mainstreamed disco to make it more acceptable to heterosexual white males, which it is, because they think that's where a lot of gay guys into the whole music, but the straight guys was into this as well. It was black and white like this disco, not just only gay people, but straight people as well. And Michael Jackson, Off the Wall, and it is ridiculed as one of the best disco albums, which it is. Off the Wall. That was his third album. That wasn't his Michael Jackson first one. His other album that he done before. So, and here's the downside why people don't like disco. They like disco to bring basically sexual free themselves, to get in the mood, and even make the drug of choice, get on the dance floor. And there was a lot of activities, a lot of very active activities going on. Some people love it because it brings in the mood, but there's some people don't like disco. You see the guy wearing a disco suck t-shirt in 1979 and 1981, a controversy declared in the line in the popularity. By the end of the 1970s, anti-disco industry in development along with rock music fans and musicians, and partly in the United States, disco was criticized as mindless consumerism, overproduced, and escapism. The phrase disco suck and disco suck and the death to disco become common. Rock artists much as Ron Stewart and David Bowie, who added the disco and elements to their music, are accusing of sellouts. They did call them sellouts, and I heard it's crazy. They call them sellouts. And the punk subculture in the United States and in the United Kingdom was offered hostile to disco all through in the UK. Many early Sex Pistol fans, much as the Lee and the Constantinists and Jordan, like disco, but often connoted as the nightclubs, much as Louis in Cicero and the Armed Protocol in Constantine. The track "Love Hangover" by Diana Ross, the house anthem, as the former was cited as much of a favorite by many early UK punks. The film, The Great Rock and Roll Swindlers, and its soundtrack album, and include a disco medley of Sex Pistol songs entitled Black Rabs, and credited to the group of the same name, Jodo and of the Jodo and Puzzles of the Dead Kennedys in the song Saturday Night uh, Saturday Night Saturday Night Holocaust, liking disco to the cradle of culture of Wilhelmine and era Germany for its Protestantism towards the government policies and an escapism. Mark Mother's Bertolo of Devallo said that the disco was like a beautiful woman with a great body and no brain, and a product of political attribute of that era. The New Jersey rock critic Jimmy Tunstall wrote and put a bullet through the jukebox, a riddle of scream, tacking disco that was going to declare a punk call to arms. Stephen Hillman, and probably to his translation from a, a, a progressive rock musician into a electric artist at the end of the 1970s with the influence of disco, and this disappeared in his rockalist fans by admitting his love for disco. With Holland Hill recall, it's like I killed their pet cat. Everybody hated disco, even rock fans. There were a lot of people like disco, but there were some people hated it. They hated disco. They didn't like it. They didn't want anything to do with it. But a lot of people believed there was a racial motivator what was going on in disco. Some people believe that, and they went to this here it is. Many groups that are popular during the disco period sequestered a struggle to the mainstream, mainly to their success. Even those that have tried to develop the musical taste. The Bee Gees, for insurance, have only one top 10 entirely 1989 one, and three more top 40 songs, and despite the recording and release far more than that, and completely abandoned the disco in their 1980s and 1990s songs. In the United States after the 1970s, even through the numbers of songs by written and have other artists performing are successful. Of the handful of groups not taken down by disco falling from favor, Kool and the Gang and Diana Summers, the Jackson, and Michael Jackson, and part of these standing out. And despite of having the help to find the disco, the sound early on, they continued to make popular and danceable. It's more refined the music, the refined the songs for yet another generation of music fans in the 1980s and beyond. Earth, Wind, and Fire also survived the anti-disco trend and continue to produce successful singles and roughly the same piece for several more years. In addition to a evenly longer stability of R&B charts, hitting that the last into the 1990s. 6 months prior to the little event in December 1978. A popular progress rock radio station, WDA, WEAI, WLS FM, have suddenly switched to all a disco format and disenfranchised the several of the Chicago rock fans and leaving them unemployed. Ooh, that's bad. WDAI, who survived the chances of a public ensettlement and still have good ratings at this point, and continue to play disco until it's flopped to a short-lived hybrid top 40 rock format in mid-1980. Another disco outlet that also completely against WDAI at the time, WGCI FM, would later and completely rate R&B and pop songs into a format and evenly into a urban commentary outlet that it continues with today. The letters would also help bringing the Chicago house genre to the airwaves. Yeah, I understand that was tough. And who responsible for bringing the disco? It was a radio disco jockey guy, and they was in the Madison Square Garden somewhere, and not Madison Square Garden. It was some kind of baseball field where the Chicago Redskins are one of them, and they burned their disco records and saying the disco shut, and everybody was gathered around. So I believe there's probably was racial motivated going on. But no matter what they say about disco, disco gonna have its place for many years' legacy to live on. You know, you can't destroy that. You might destroy it then, but you can't destroy it now. It's still part of it. But it doesn't matter. Music is music. So here's what I say about music and disco. What is the difference between R&B, rock and roll, jazz, blues, soul, country, and rock? What is the difference between all these different genres and punk and many more? It's still music. I believe that music should not be criticized of just because how different it sound and how it makes it sound. Music supposed to bring all different race of people together, black or white, straight or gay, it doesn't matter. If you love the music, love music. I like disco. I don't think I have a problem with hating disco. I love rock, but I love rap too, and pop. Let's not discriminate music. Let's enjoy the music for what it is at the time then and the time now. So music will live on, and even though disco is not gone, it's still there. It's just have another different sentiment of influence, how much influence disco and how it touched a lot of people. Even if they hate it or not, but you gotta admit, some people liked it. It's not meant for you, it meant some people. So peace and one love for everybody, and shout out to anybody who liked the music that they love. Let's not discriminate it. Let's embrace for what music things and what they are, and leave it at that. And that's all I can say. It's your boy Domination. This is Back in the Basic. Chugging the deuces, how we do text, baby. Until next time, all right? All right. Peace, I'm out. All right. Peace.